Hey everybody, it's Angelo here, and I first want to say thank you to everyone who liked yesterday's photo. I never imagined that we would get over 50 people to like that thing. I'm going to knuckle down, tag everybody in this video. Big thank you, big shout out to the strength community on Facebook. If you're unfamiliar with Prilepins table, I posted an article and a video on my timeline. Check that out. Get yourself schooled up and join the conversation. I'm really looking forward to see what you guys have to say, so let's get right into it. To give a little bit of background on A.S. Prilepin, he was a Soviet strength coach that developed this chart by looking at his athletes' manuals and developing these protocols to represent the relationship between volumes and loads. Now, to understand the table itself, the first column represents your percentage of 1 rep max. The second column represents your reps per set. The third column is your optimal reps. And the last column is your rep range. Now, what Prilepins table enables you to do is build a framework for your loading protocols and help you categorize them, whether they're low, optimal, or high. Now, one thing Prilepins table doesn't really do a great job on is representing the relationship between total volume and work volume. Now, when I first started using this table, I had a hard time understanding that relationship. Using this loading progression as an example, my total volume may have been correct according to the table. However, the first 3 sets fell below my desired intensity. It is very important when writing your progressions to make sure that you are programming the correct volumes with the desired intensities. Now, applying Prilepins table in the real world is where the science meets the art of program design. There are 2 methods that I typically use when writing progressions. Here is an example of the first method, using Jim Wendler's 5-3-1 program and focusing on week 1's progression. You can clearly see that my total volume and my top weight are all out of whack according to this chart. However, by adding the color code to the progression, you can clearly see how Prilepins chart can help you balance your progressions. Personally, I classify anything below 75% as a warm-up or technique development set. Typically, I write these build-up sets with low volumes so not to affect my work sets. As a rule of thumb when writing my progressions, I do my best to make sure that my work set volumes and loads match up with the volume and load ranges of Prilepins chart. Another way I like to use Prilepins chart is to localize the volume by using performance cluster. Using an example of an 8x3 protocol with a total volume of 24 reps, and programming a 5x3 performance cluster in that protocol. Again, following the same rules as before, you can clearly see that the designated work sets fall right in the recommendations for both areas 2 and 3. Using Prilepins table and staying within the recommended ranges, you can write sound programs with relative ease, begin to experiment with them, and start building your own progressions for yourself. These are just 2 methods that I use in my programming, option A being the progressive overload method and spreading the volume out evenly over the entire progression, or I like to use option B and localize the volume within a specific loading range. I typically program progressive overload method with new athletes that I do not particularly know where their strength levels are. When I program this method, I typically use high volume with a relatively high load and use it primarily in off-season training. Once the athletes have a grasp on the technique of the given movement, I'll begin to perform rep maxes and evaluate their progress weekly. Once I have an idea of the athlete's capabilities and they become experienced lifters, I will start to program the performance clusters and localizing the overload. I like performance clusters because you can really focus on the bar speed and use more of an optimal load versus a maximal load, and even start to incorporate velocity-based training to evaluate increases in strength and power. I feel this method focuses more on strength capacity by challenging athletes and seeing how many times they can duplicate that effort at a set weight. This method can also be used in season by managing the intensity and the volumes as well. Just want to say thank you to everyone who liked yesterday's photo and is watching the video here today. I have a couple of questions out to the strength community, seeing if you guys have a preferred method, whether it's progressive, localized, or do you have another method? Do you use both? Do you use neither? And just to see the who, what, when, where, how, and why you guys are writing your programs. I just want to see how you guys interpret and utilize Prilepins table in your programming and just kind of get your thoughts. If you have questions, leave them below. Again, thank you guys for everything, and let's have fun with this concept.